All right, Shawne, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Just grinding away.
I hear that. I hear that. I'm so excited to talk to you. I used to watch you, so anytime now as a lead writer at Authority Magazine, I get a special opportunity to meet people like yourself and pick your brain, and then also share your impact that you're having socially. And I think, just the things and the mindsets of individuals like yourself, what you have to offer for the next generation of kids kind of coming up, leaders in a much different world than we grew up in. And we need people to share experience and knowledge, and we want to share your story. So again, I appreciate you jumping on with me, hit a little bit about your career. We don't have as much time as I wanted, but we'll make the most of it. Okay.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right, good. So real quick, let's just dive right in. Just share with me a little bit and give me that quick few minute highlight of just like your origin story of like, your love for football, and then just take me really quick through the career just so our audience knows who you are.
Yeah, I grew up in Prince George's County, Maryland, and in that Washington D.C. area back when in the late '80s and '90s when Washington D.C. wasn't the best place to be, and so I think a lot of that when you talk even before getting to football is kind of you see a lot of things, a lot of crime, a lot of a lot of bad things happen in the area. And for me, it was kind of something that prepared me, and I didn't know, right? Growing up tough like that, you're kind of thankful now, and as you look on it and some of the things we went through, like we experienced homelessness a few different times. And at the time, you don't know why this is happening, why this is going on. And, it kind of gave me an extra layer of skin, growing up in the area. And so by the time that I started making my way through football, I went to Frederick Douglass High School in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. Committed to the University of Maryland my junior year, and I wanted to stay home. That was my biggest thing. I wanted to stay home, and it's one of the biggest things you just said is inspiring that next wave of youth, that next up and coming talent, because most of the big name stars leave, and they went to at the time Florida State and Penn State and Ohio State and everywhere else. They didn't stay home, man. So I wanted to be one of the first ones that basically had college offers from everywhere in the country, and I wanted to stay home. That was it for me. And getting drafted in 2005 by the then San Diego Chargers kind of really put me on the map as far as like where I came from, the whole lights out origin. And back then it wasn't social media, there was no YouTube. And so people hear about this whole lights out thing and me knocking people out during games, and it became like a myth, like a folktale. And I'll take it back first. My freshman year at the University of Maryland, we played Georgia Tech, ESPN night. I think it was Friday Night Football, and I had a big hit, knocked the wide receiver down, a big, massive hit, and it got on the map. Then like, oh, this lights out guy, that's who he is, right? This origin, this folktale. And then again, my rookie year with the Chargers, we played Kansas City Chiefs and had a big hit against Priest Holmes, and so those things kind of put me on the map where. You got millions of people watching now. And so now the stories.
So and I got to tell you, so just knowing your story, and what I'm so curious about is when you get that nickname, how quickly does it attach to your identity of how you see yourself? Because it's an incredible thing. You got a label and it became part of your identity. It really did. So most people have a label and it's not a good label. Your label scares the hell out of people.
No, it's the truth. But, there's two sides of that, right? Because one, it's cool having a nickname, but you become a target. Right now, you're this lights out guy that people didn't want you to have a good game against, right? Like, we don't care who wins out here, but he can't have a good game. Well, he can't do anything because we're going to see that stupid dance, right, that everybody was so afraid of me doing. And so it became a style of play, man. Like it was, you knew that you were getting 60 minutes, 4 quarters, just all out effort, jumping over the pile and running through people and diving over things. And, once you kind of put that stamp on it, the pressure's on me, right? It's like back in the day when they had Rucker Park in New York, when you got your nickname, like you had to live up to that. And so it was a constant week in and week out, man. I was bulletin board material because every time I got a big sack or 2 or 3, it was going to end up on ESPN or somewhere on Fox Sports and one of the highlights. So everybody didn't want to go there. They didn't want to be on the highlights. So they made sure they tried to stop me each and every week. But again, I love putting that pressure on myself always, and I still do. I still love putting that type of pressure on myself.
So that's what I'm curious. When you ended your career, did that identity stay with you? And if so, how did it stay with you?
It did, because it became a brand, right? It was like, it started with me having this blue mohawk, flying around and a crazy person on Sunday on game day. But then it came like a thing where every time lights out was talked about, even when they were talking about basketball games, someone shooting the lights out, I was referenced, I was tagged on things, and it became like one of these things. Like, I was synonymous with lights out, and there was no way I can break that, which was great, because I ended up turning into much bigger things than what I did on the field.
So did you ever have any like that dissonance of like, I'm being tagged and labeled a certain way, it has become part of my identity, but did you feel 100% wholly aligned with it? Or are there times where it didn't feel like that's not really who I am?
It was half and half, right? I think that because I did so much work off the field, a lot of charity stuff. I was doing a ton of TV sitcoms and movies and shows and things like that, where people saw me in a different light. It was difficult at a certain period of time, because you get labeled as this guy that kind of run around the field, as a crazy person for 4 quarters. And so then you're known for that, and people not quite seeing that you can do other things.
Or who you really are.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
If I'm going into business with you, I'm talking to you about something, I've got this stereotype of you in my head, and whether you align with that identity or you don't will have a lot to do with how we either trust each other or think we're fakes.
Yeah, no, trust me. It was and it worked out. I'm telling you, it worked out in my benefit, and I'll tell you why. Because half the time, working with anybody or doing any kind of business or even a meeting, people want to get to know who you are, right? And so when people know, oh, Shawne Merriman lights out, okay, at least I know who he is. And then within that 5-minute conversation, like, man, this is not the guy that go around trying to knock people out. So that part of it was cool to have that experience.
So how did you discover that piece? Because being tagged and labeled the way you were early on in your career, you can imagine a lot of young professionals, people who are trying to be leaders, they're trying to find themselves and figure things out. You are basically telling me now that, yeah, you got labeled and tagged that identity, and it did become part of you, but it wasn't truly wholeheartedly all of you. And so people had to either give you a chance to not judge you and give you an opening for you to be able to share who you really are, because you seem like you're a transparent person. But how did you discover who you really were? Or did you always know from way back when who you were?
Yeah, I always knew. And in fact, it's just a lot of times, like I said, it worked out in my benefit, because it didn't take much longer for people to really, once you're around, you're like, oh, okay,
right.
This is, and I used to laugh all the time, because people come up to me nervous because they seen this guy on the field. And sometimes I'll be at a restaurant, I'll kind of joke around. People come up and ask for autographs. I'm like, no, I'm not signing nothing, right? Being a jerk. And I'll turn around in 2 seconds, like, I'm just joking around, because they expect, you to be this big, mean, angry person that ran around on the field on Sundays.
Yeah. Yeah, you have like an advantage. I had this in business, where I had a business that didn't have such a great stereotype out in the public, and I had to change that perception. And it sounds to me like you being yourself is able to do that. Unfortunately, today, most kids don't have a formula. They don't have as much confidence knowing who they are. And when they do attach themselves, especially in sports, and when I see it in the athletic realm, where their career does end and they don't have a lights out brand, they're sitting with nothing and they don't know what to do. Right.
I think, yeah, and you're right. And so when I tell guys, you may not be, internationally known or nationally known as a guy, but you're still somebody in your hometown. So you still have a brand. And I try to remind these guys and say, you went to Texas or Texas Tech or Florida State or Florida, right? You're very known there. And so you have a brand there. It might not be as big and as grand as everyone knowing, but people know you. And so I talk to a lot of guys and say, you just recognize your brand and get to that core. Get to that core of people who know who you are, and you can build anything. You can build a following for business. You can build a podcast, radio show, sell T-shirts, products. You don't have to be. You can grow from there, because you have a starting point that still most people don't. You played, the big college. You had even a short stint in the NFL. You played in the NFL.
It does come with a disadvantage, because those individuals who had that stardom, they're constantly seeking the attention of people, and they want to make sure they give enough that they can keep that fuel firing and going. And the problem is they lose touch with who they really are. Like you made a comment, you said at your core. And I think, if you're doing something for your brand, there's always going to be that asterisk of, am I doing it really because this is truly who I am? Or am I doing it because I need to get visibility, right? And I think right now it's just hard for most people who don't have someone significant in their life who's mentored them or has a program or a community or something where they have other like-minded individuals who care enough to share and then be there and challenge and hold them accountable.
Yeah, that's a big struggle with guys, especially when they move on from the game, is the identity part, right? Because they're so attached to who they were that when you don't have that stardom, that the big game on a national TV network, and then 50 people texting you after, and then all that's done, right? So you got to find out who you really are. But once you do that, I try to remind these guys that don't go back to your core. You have a base, you got a fan base, you got supporters, and get back to them as soon as you can.
So let me ask you the question: this, if someone comes to you, a young professional, and they said to you, Shawne, like, it sounds great. I heard you on that interview. Like, how do I do that? Like, where do I start if they're lost, and they're truly lost, and they've been algorithmed up on their phone since they were born, and they are so distracted? What kind of guidance could you give someone about just the fundamental, like, core identity, who you are? Like, how does someone go about doing that? Or how would you recommend someone start that process?
I think first and foremost, we all struggle because we want to compete. So it took me about 2 years mentally to let the game go. I'm sitting on the couch, I'm watching the games. You feel like, oh, I can do that. I can, so you have this competitive spirit that you can get off the couch and do what they're doing. Right. But I think it's once you let go of the game mentally, you can start to kind of build on who you are. And once you find out who you are, a lot of these guys broke records in high school. They still hold high school records. Everyone knows them in their town. Some of these guys went to a big Division I school. There's donors there. There's all kind of people in that school, in that university, that program, that know you. I get back to the people that know you, so you don't have to introduce yourself again. Told you have to. We talked about it earlier. Half the battle is people knowing who you are. That gets you into the room. And then after that, now the second part is you have to tell them now who your identity is now, not the guy that was out there playing for 4 quarters.
Right. Hopefully they can see it and feel it from you when they're with you, which I can already tell with you. I'm sure people feel you pretty hardcore when they're with you. I mean, I could tell you let people in. I'm curious, if you think about the biggest impact on your life outside of family, if there's someone in your family that had an impact, but who was the biggest influence of you? And maybe let's just take football. The biggest influence, whether it was a player, a coach, whoever, and who was it, and what was it about them that makes them stick in your mind as someone who's really had a huge impact on influence on you?
Yeah, I would say LaVar Arrington, to play for the Washington Redskins back in the day, now Commanders, and Ray Lewis. Those two guys, they took me under their wing when they didn't have to. I met LaVar my sophomore year at Frederick Douglass High School in Marlboro, Maryland. And his younger brother, I convinced him to come play basketball with me when LaVar got drafted from Penn State. And so we found a relationship there. But, he didn't know that I was going to be a first-round draft pick. He didn't know that I was going to go into Pro Bowls and All Pros and all that stuff. He took the time. He saw something in me quite early and took me under his wing. So I was around him, working out with him. I would go to his team hotel sometime the night before games and kind of spend some time looking at the playbook. And then when I was in college, Ray Lewis's younger brother, Keon Lattimore, played running back. And so me and Ray end up developing a relationship. And that was just, it was so key for me because Ray will go down as probably the best is the best linebacker of all time. And for him to give me his knowledge and wisdom, on and off the field, because he was already doing it, already won a Super Bowl at that time. And he really we talked almost every night before games when I was in the NFL. That's how close we were.
Wow. Do you have people like that in your life right now?
I wish I had the time, but I do. So what I do now is, and I'll tell anybody this, especially when it comes to the business aspect, get with people who already had massive success in your industry. Get with them. Don't try to figure it out. Don't guess. Don't throw your money and spend your time at things that you don't know. Almost become like their intern in a way. I mean, and I don't care how big you are or how much money you got, because you want their experience and their knowledge. They've already made the mistakes that you don't need to make. And so I try to tell anybody, I say, get with them, because they'll say, hey, I did this, it didn't work for me. I did this, it did work. That can save you tons of money, tons of time, tons of headache. And if someone, and this goes back to walking into a room, whether you're Shawne Merriman or whoever came from, Florida State, you're known. People know who you are, or you've been a short stint in the NFL. You played in the NFL. You might not have been a star, but people know who you are. That gets you into a room. So anytime somebody that's doing what you're doing, gives you their time, take it. Take that as much as you can.
Right. It's free and it's an easy ask. And people usually like to share their insights and they like to help. So you just have to eat into that. It's great. Um, I'm going to ask you a tougher question. If you think about one of the hardest things that you had to go through in your career, think of it like work, right? You had to go through something really, really hard. How did you, if you're willing to share it, and how did you get through it?
It was my first big injury in 2008 because I never missed any time before. So, kind of going there, and when I blew my knee out, after I had surgery, sitting around and watching the guys go out to practice in the games, reading the newspaper clippings and the media saying, what is he ever going to be able to play again and be the same type of player? It was that I had to get over because I'd never been in that situation before. I never missed any significant amount of time. That's when I had to start looking around at, hey, this thing could be over. Because as an athlete, we all walk around like we're Superman and nothing can bother us. And we're taught to put our finger back in place, our shoulder back in place, bite down, tape it up, and get back in the game. That's our mentality. So the first time, I felt human, where I was like, man, I can get hurt. This thing can be over. So I really had to hone in on what I wanted to do next.
It's funny. We talk about in our leadership program about the little drunk in your head that talks to you, right? And so like, people look at you and they see your career and they see the confidence and they see the skill. But when you're going through that and you get hurt and you're feeling bad for yourself and you get in the downs, how do you jolt yourself out of that?
Yeah, the biggest thing is when we talked about my upbringing, right? And all the things we had to go through and coming home and eviction notices on the door, coming home, the lights and gas was off and there was no food there. If I can make it through that, I can make it through anything because there's nothing like that as a kid. Right. Coming home to that, you shouldn't. I don't wish that upon no kid. So when you start to build these layers of skin that most people don't have because they didn't have to deal with that.
Right.
When I had the injury, it was tough, but I always knew that I would be fine. I always knew that even when my career ended and I always felt very confident in the next phase of life. And a lot of that started from my upbringing, where I grew up and what I went through.
It's interesting. You got to remember where you came from. And so, like you said, a lot of kids don't have that. And so when they ask that question, they can't go back and look at when things were worse for them because they maybe have been spoiled by a parent who went through hard stuff like you did. And then you didn't want your kid to go through the same thing. Meanwhile, it's the biggest gift of your life and made you who you are. So someone who comes to you now, young professional, athlete, who's been spoiled, the parents have entitled them, the kid has had their parents doing everything for them since they were born. What kind of message, especially if they're trying to hit the elite level that they could probably reach if they have the right mindset? Like how do you wake someone up? How do you rock them out of that slumber?
First of all, tell anybody swing big. You gotta take big swings at things and take risks. A lot of people are scared to get out what I call get out the cradle of living like that. And there's nothing wrong with that at all if you've been spoiled and things like that. But the real satisfaction comes from self-worth, from self-working, rolling up your sleeves, because you have a new appreciation for what you're doing, right? I think that when it's given to you, you don't fully appreciate it the way you should. And you only appreciate it when those things taken away. So parents, one, I got a 14-year-old son. He's well taken care of, but he works like hell still. I'm on him. But two, just teaching the values, man, teaching the values of life. And he has to go out there and make his own way. And so from the parents down to the kid or the person, believe it or not, there's some adults out here that are still being taken care of by their family.
Of course.
And again, that's not bad. Now that if you have someone taking, that's the biggest time to take risks. That, if anybody want to get ahead in life, when you have that security of someone taking care of you, I don't necessarily look at that as a bad thing. I look at that as a way to, hey, look, I can take a big swing at this thing. I know somebody got my back. I know somebody. So it should in a sense push you to work harder and do things and take risks that you wouldn't be able to. We couldn't take any risks. We couldn't because we were one bad mistake from being homeless. We were one bad mistake from the lights being back on. We were one bad mistake from not having a car, right? And so when you can't take those risks. So if you do have someone out there that is taking care of you, man, swing because one of those might hit.
I would even go as far as to say taking care of, but even someone who supports you, someone who unconditionally has your back, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a family, because I have to tell you, like doing it by yourself, have fun, right? Like there's just no way to just doing it by yourself. And it's just like a lonely battle if you're going to try to go about that and not get any help or support from other people. And I would imagine on a football field, especially in the sports world, depending on your teammates to be there for you, not going dark and kind of going off on your own, which could have some serious consequences on a team, especially a team that's trying to be, become the Super Bowl champs.
Yeah, no. And look, like you said, it is a very dark, lonely road when you're doing it by yourself, right? It is you feel isolated. You feel like you got to figure things out. Your back is always against the wall, and so I wouldn't wish those things. But sometimes you have to. You got to go through that dark road and look at that light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. If you could go back to any moment, and I rephrase this question because every time I ask it, people said I don't regret anything, and it's not about regrets. If you can go back to relive any moment, what moment would you go back to and relive it?
A lot, actually. I will go back and take my time a little bit more, right? For example, I got drafted at 20 years old, and I was, youngest drafted player at the time ever. And so when you got that, you got money for the first time, you got publicists and financial advisors and, just outside stuff. And I would have pushed everybody off and said, hey, I got to go play football. I got to focus on this and not try to do everything early on. Now it changed, later on in my career where I was much more better in managing my time and in managing certain situations. But when I was younger, I would have definitely just took everything day by day, slowed down the process and wasn't doing so much.
And can you think of a specific moment that you would go back to and relive, but not change it?
I mean, I would say, more importantly, man, around that injury time, right? When I got hurt. And so, I wanted to do TV. I wanted to do this. I wanted to do that. And I was still always very focused on football. I was the first one in the gym, last one to leave type of thing. But I also wanted to do everything else too, right? And so if I could do it over again, I would kind of just manage a lot of things a lot different.
Yeah. Very cool. So tell me what you're into now. Tell me what some of the projects you're working on and your transition into the business world. Just tell me a little bit about that transition and how you applied things you learned from football that have benefited you after, your season.
Yeah, I just launched my new free ad-supported all sports streaming service called Lights Out Sports TV. We're available on every smart TV device in the world, iOS, Android. Got a ton of live sports there, 30 fast channels, 300 sports movies and sports documentaries. And we're constantly adding live sports every day. And I also have my MMA company, Lights Out Extreme Fighting, which is a top feeder to the UFC.
Wow.
And so
you got to back up real quick. Hold on a second. The first thing you have, did you start this?
Yeah. I just launched about a little over 5 months now. And so how that came about, when I retired, I got straight into TV. I got the opportunity to work at NFL Network a couple of years and Fox Sports a couple of years and ESPN a couple of years, WWE Network also a couple of years. So my extensive background in TV and broadcasting and production and streaming. And so just it intrigued me more about where this space was going. Most of my fan base and social media follower is sports. Right. And so it's just everything that we talk about and I talk about for the most part is always related to sports. So it was right up my alley. Now you got an authentic voice, somebody who really care about sports and just sports. I try to stay away from politics as much as I possibly can and anything else that's not involved in sports. And so, yeah, we're distributed on every smart TV and we're making more and more announcements.
How did you go from this idea of what you wanted to do and be this authentic, personality and brand? How did you get it to actually making it real?
Yeah. Again, one of the biggest things is from playing football, being this Shawne Merriman lights out, right? You get access to be able to reach out to some of these people, these presidents of these bigger networks or streaming platforms, and say, hey, look, I'm looking to starting something. I'm looking to doing something. And then they'll pick up the call and they say, hey, tell me when you want to come in the next few weeks. And so I literally, for a couple of years, I sat down with people and told them what I wanted to do. And then I got all the information, all the knowledge. I started hiring, people from other bigger streaming services who wanted to be a part of what I was building. And so then I'm not going to crown myself the genius here. I just got some really good, smart people and experienced people around me to kind of roll out my vision, right? Because I don't know. I'm operating a business. We have, a big staff and a big team. I don't know everything. Every day I'm still learning something, right? So
what is the big vision? What is the big dream? What was it? And is it still the same or has it pivoted?
Yeah, we want to be number one in the sports streaming space in the world, you know, and I believe we got an opportunity to do that.
Wow. And why? Why? What gives you the confidence to believe that? Because the people that you're competing with are how are they different? What makes your brand and what you're providing more valuable to people, you think?
Yeah, we're not trying to compete. We're creating lanes that people are not in, right? I think that so many people get caught up in, oh, this is the biggest. We got to be bigger than them. No, you just have to be different and create lanes that's not there. For example, we just launched a 60-minute live tailgating show called The Ultimate Fan Zone, which is a three former hosts. They're in the parking lot 2 hours before kickoff, kind of hanging out, asking questions with the fans and grilling and music and cornhole and games. And bring it's super fan oriented. I mean, you can't get closer to the fan before the game, and everybody can watch the game, but everybody couldn't watch the tailgate. So I said, why is there no one doing something with tailgates? That's the FOMO is created through tailgates. You know, everybody wish they went to the game, so they wish they went to their fun to the tailgate. And so we brought this thing to life, and we're also live in 90 airports, 2,400 plus gates in the country with this show.
So you guys go to tailgates and you start recording?
Oh yeah, it's a whole live stream, an hour long a live stream in the parking lot, and it is outstanding. We just had the Bills tailgate a couple weeks ago, and it was over the top.
And is it just professional sports, or do you do college?
No, I think we'll get there. I think we'll get to some of these other tailgates in colleges, and looking at NASCAR and looking at some of these soccer games.
There's nothing like Ohio State. You got to come to Columbus.
Trust me, I know. I've been there. I've been to a tailgate at Ohio State, so I know exactly how that is. So,
right. How many employees do you have?
Overall, between my MMA company and Lights Out Sports, 32. Wow, somewhere around there.
And what would you say is your biggest leadership challenge when it comes to leading a team that is probably not as tough as your old team?
Well, the mentality is still there. I want to compete. I always want to compete. I always want to get better. And I think that's what drives me. And, when I talk to a lot of guys that's trying to figure out their next phase and what they want to do, I say, you got to find something that gets you out of the bed like it did with football, makes you feel how you felt running out of that tunnel of 70,000 people. Once you have that feeling, you're going to be good, because I truly believe this. I believe that athletes are the most disciplined people on the planet of the earth. We've been told what time to wake up, what time to eat, what time to go to bed, how much film to watch, how long to work out, how blowing the whistle. I mean, we've had structure our entire life, and it's so important to me now that my life is based on structure. Right. If I'm up at 5 or 5:30, and I got to get here at 6:30, I got to be here at 7:15. It is a nonstop of just being disciplined, and that comes from me playing football.
Absolutely. And it's hard for kids who don't have that, and they don't have that gift. It makes a big difference, because I think discipline and just business in general, it's all about the thousands of little disciplines that you can do that make you unique and make you stand out. I would imagine with your team, let alone your nickname, but I know just what I dealt with for 25 years with my employees, having them overcome the fear of being able to either challenge you, give you feedback, ask you curious questions without feeling like an idiot. I'm curious, you must have had that challenge 10 times harder as a leader, because you knew people were scared of you before they even. How do you overcome that barrier and build the trust that you need in order to find the flow and the chemistry that you want on a team?
I had to break the ice for sure. I mean, a lot of people, not even because of my size and stature, but they know me as, and a lot of my staff were fans of mine, when I was playing and stuff like that. So they may not come to me with an idea. So I make sure that everybody, if they got ideas, bring them, right? Because we can only grow by having new ideas and being creative. And especially when you're surrounding yourself with people with experience, I want to know what worked when you were at another network or streaming company, what worked there. Come and tell me what worked. Tell me what didn't work, right? And so that's why you bring experience and a lot of people that's a lot smarter than you around, because, you rely on them to bring these ideas so you can keep growing.
Right. All right. So you got that business. Your other brand was what?
Lights Out Extreme Fighting.
And so help me understand. I mean, I'm big into that sport. I love that sport. It is so cool. And I'm a wrestler, so I like seeing all the wrestlers grapple in there. How did you get involved with that? And what is the tie with UFC? And is it a competitor? Is it an alignment? What is it?
No, so I started training myself back in the mid 2000s, like with Randy Couture and Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, all these guys. And I just did it to be a better football player, using my hands and being able to be active with my hands and balance and leverage and conditioning, because there's no better conditioning than that sport. It ultimately made me a better football player. So in 2019, I ended up launching Lights Out Extreme Fighting. Again, because I've been around this MMA space for almost 18 years now, and I knew all the managers, all the coaches, all the gyms, all the fighters, the matchmakers, the operations, I've been around the sport. And so it was easier for me to start and build it. Now for me, what I've been really focusing on is transitioning some of these eyeballs from the NFL. A lot of my core fan base is from the NFL. So now people are seeing these up and coming fighters that they didn't know existed. And a lot of these guys, we're getting a guy or two called up to the UFC every few months or so. So we become a nice feeder. And we're not trying to compete with the UFC. We want to get to as many fighters as we can to the UFC, because that looks good on us, right? That makes us like, hey, we got the best up and coming talent in the world. Yeah. So we want to keep sending these guys there.
Right. So I would imagine, your businesses, those two businesses, help support, they provide the security, the financial, security that you need in order to live the life you want, philanthropically and giving back. How big of a part of your life, where does it come from? And maybe more specifically, what are you doing?
Yeah. This Saturday, we got my 22nd annual winter coat drive at the University of Maryland football game against Rutgers. And that is crazy saying 22nd. I feel old, but it started. I'll tell you exactly the day. What really got me to do this. There was a big blizzard in '96 in Maryland, and I remember me and my younger sister, standing outside, and it was brick cold, and the wind was blowing, and we had on 2 sweatshirts and socks on our hands because we couldn't afford a coat. And so when I got to Maryland, I said, man, if I can do something that make another kid not feel the way we felt that day, then I would. And so we started this, I started this coat drive at the University of Maryland, and I was just hoping to get 100 coats. I wasn't looking to make this a big thing. I was like, man, if we get 100 coats, I'm helping 100 people. That's really cool. That's a really good deal. We got over 3,000 coats the first time out. And at that point, that's when I knew that it was a massive, massive thing. And a lot of people wanted to help. And a lot of people need it. So now, 22 years later, we're over 30,000 coats. We're over 30,000 coats now. And I want this thing to keep going as long as I can. And
how do people find out about it?
It's out there. The University of Maryland's posted it on their website. They have signs all the way up in the College Park area, and DTLR, which is a big clothing and shoe store, has come in to donate a bunch of coats again this year.
I would imagine all you got to do is make a call, and people are going to be happy to donate some stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm out there collecting myself. For 22 years, I've been collecting myself. So the cool thing of it is that I get a chance to see people that came 22 years ago. They bring in their teenage kid now, which is just insane.
Wow.
And they're it's really cool because they will bring pictures and they'll show of them being 18, 19 years old, or however old they were at the time. And now they have teenage kids, right? It's crazy, and their kid is now dropping coats off in a bin, and that to me is always been really cool.
How does someone contribute to it if they want to?
Yep, just come if you come to the University of Maryland Rutgers game on Saturday. I'll be collecting at 3 entrances.
Nice.
Also, I'm going to talk to them also about maybe dropping a bin off at the beginning of the campus. I'm trying to put some signs out there. So if you're not coming to the game, at least you got a chance to go drop off the bin. So we've been doing this for a long time, and we really hope we can continue this for a long time as well.
Do you get requests from people who want to give you stuff, but they can't because they're not there?
All the time, mainly money, and so I tell them, I say, no, we're not accepting money. We're just, taking the coats and scarves and gloves and hats, things like that, so we can go and donate these to, the Salvation Army, and also a lot of homeless vets shelters that's in the College Park area we donate to.
So I'm curious, just out of curiosity, why not take the money and just buy a bunch of coats?
It's just it's much cleaner that way. We want to we didn't want to get into the fact of taking people's money and wondering where it's going and everything like that. We wanted to and also too selfishly, I always love dropping the coats off after everything is picked up and kind of seeing everybody's faces and just the excitement and gratefulness of everybody too.
I'll tell you, it's an awesome idea, and what I love about it is I love that you didn't do what I would have probably done, was to try to figure out a way to collect the money, buy more coats, because honestly, your way's simple. It's easy. It is clean. And I think, sometimes we try to make things a little too complex, and it creates chaos in our lives that we then regret. And so I like that philosophy. That's something I'll take away from this for sure.
It's one of these, it's my life, man. I try to keep things as simple. Everything I do is just make it as simple as possible. Because when it's simple, it doesn't complicate things, like you said, and then you can be much more efficient.
So why do you think people do that? Why do you think that people mess with themselves so much by overthinking and overcomplicating situations that do not require anything other than something simple as a result?
I think it's the focus of people sometime, and wanting to be like an octopus and want to do this and want to do that. I say this: you can't be great at 5 things. You can be great at 1 or 2. You can't be great at 5 or 10 things. So why do it, right? So if I can't be great at something, I'm just not going to do it. And that's why when you ask me what I got going on, it's lights out sports TV and it's lights out extreme fighting. I get offers to do things all the time. We can open up these 20 car wash. These apartment buildings are. I'm like, listen, if I dedicate 12 to 14 hours a day with these 2 things, we're going to have massive success. And that opens the door because you have a foundation now to do other things once it blows up. That's the key. But if you try to do everything before it blows up, those 1 or 2 things will never be great.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, the skill of saying no when you want to do something that you love, that is not an easy skill to learn. I mean, you got to discipline yourself in a way. I mean, I'm a visionary and I like to do different things too. And I've caught myself in those situations where you kind of chase the next flavor of the month. And you're right, that focus. And the problem right now, and you're probably seeing it as well, I think everybody does, is that everything that shouldn't be getting our attention and focus gets it. And to be disciplined to shut it out and to block it out and to be able to do whatever inner work or whatever work you need to do on your vision or yourself, you got to do. But I think it's it's a road less traveled. I think people don't want to spend time. They don't want to be by themselves. They don't want to be without the scrolling and the messaging, and they need to feel that connection. I think it's a real struggle for the next generation of leaders trying to come up and lead other people.
Yeah. And I'll say this, man, to maintain that level of focusness, like you said, it's not easy because we're all easily distracted with other things. But if you can be dedicated and disciplined enough and have that focus, man, you can really, really blow something up and just concentrate, even if you've done alone time for, several months at a time, where you're just waking up at the same time every day, working 10, 12 hours. Just if you did that for 6 to 12 months, your whole entire life will change. Right. Everything would change. And people, I think, are afraid of what they're going to miss out on if they do that. And so what you got to understand is, if you have that level of focusness for 1 year, just 1 year, when you're just nonstop focused on those 1 or 2 things, your whole life, your whole world would change if you're able to do that.
Yeah, no doubt. It takes some pretty hardcore discipline to do that. All right, I got a few more questions. One is, can you think of anything specific that maybe people think you're a little crazy about, but for you it's normal?
Yeah, starting your own network. I think when people say like, "What you're doing what?" and I'm like, "Yeah, this is something I've been wanting to do for a very long time," and that I've studied, that I've sit around some of the best and brightest in this business. Especially into a competitive market. There's a lot of streaming services out here now, and we look for ways to separate ourselves. So I always watch what I tell people, at least before I do it, because somebody might try to talk me out of it, and I don't want to be talked out of it. And so I go and do it, and then you hear about it, and I'm like, hey, look, it's already done. It's already out.
It's amazing. It's amazing how many leaders don't recognize that moment of truth, that when someone's sharing something and you say something and you bust their bubble, you take all the air out of their passion. You got to be, and you're right, you got to be quiet and just model the way, show them what it looks like, because it's a shame when you have someone who cares about you say something that completely just knocks your sail out of your win, right? It's unconsciously almost. They don't even know they're doing it, which is crazy.
Yeah, they're not doing it purposely, but they're just deflecting for what they can't do or what they were afraid to do. It's not that they don't believe you can do it. They're scared to do it, or they don't want to take that lead. They can't fathom themselves doing it. So they would self-consciously just tell you, hey, that sounds crazy. Why would you do that? And they don't mean any harm by it, but they just can't put it in their minds that they're capable of doing something like that. And that's why before I do things, I don't discuss with anybody. I do it. And then when you hear about it, hey, it's already done. I'm already in the process.
I love that. All right. Your 14-year-old son, you said?
Yeah.
You have one opportunity to teach him a fundamental principle, something, a core value that you want to instill in your son because he's living in a crazy world that's different than the world you grew up on. What's one principle, one core value of yours that you feel is so important, the way you live your life, that you, if you can instill this one thing in your kid, this would be it?
I always tell him, man, just stay true to who he is. And mainly because, there's so much social media out here. There's so much trend, people following trends and doing what the next person is doing. If you do anything different than the next person, then you're the oddball, right? Hey, what's wrong with you? And I always tell them, man, just stay true to who you are, because eventually you're going to win in the long run. Those people that are doing what everyone else is doing, their time runs out because they're being led astray. They're not being led down the right path. They're just following what the next person is doing. And don't be afraid to be different, man. Like, who cares? Difference over time is what's going to get applauded, not following the leader.
It's so true, and it's so hard, right? They can hear it, they can intellectually understand what you're saying, but they care too much about what people think. And you're right, you got to know who you are in order to like let it bounce off you. And I always say you have to care, but not that much.
Yeah, it's true.
All right, I got one last question, last one. So you have a team of 30 people, you're trying to grow, you got a big vision, a big dream for your company, you're a leader, and you have influence. You have influence not only in your inner circle, but you have influence when you make a phone call because of your identity, which has gotten you far, and it's credible. And I think people respect that. One thing I know about athletes, and all the athletes that I've been able to interview, and many of the successful entrepreneurs, they have that constant and never ending learning mindset. And they're always trying to get better. And if you're an entrepreneur of two companies, you're always trying to make your team better because you know that's the way to be successful because of your past performance. If there's one thing that you can look at yourself, you're giving yourself feedback. You're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're being as transparent and vulnerable as you can, that if you could do one thing better as a leader, it would be this one thing. And you're struggling with it, what would it be?
I think the biggest thing for me is I expect a lot of things out of other people that I expect for myself, right? Like, I roll out of the bed in the morning, I wake up and I'm ready to go. Right? I don't need to hype up speeds. I don't need to, hey, let's go. I don't need any of that. But it's some people that do. It's some people that need that little bit of encouragement because they don't have that natural confidence about them, right? And so while I roll out of the bed, I always have to remind myself that everybody's not like that. And you got to kind of understand that, and work with that person, because you can get the most out of them, right? By trying to coach them up or motivate them in ways that you don't need it, but they do. And so that's one of the things I constantly, because I love to go. And even at my bad times, where you would never tell, because I could go out my day and just still get stuff done. And certain people, when they're having a bad time, a bad day, they just shut down.
Right.
And so you may need to go to those people and kind of pick them up in a way that you don't need to. So I have to constantly remind myself that just don't expect everything out of other people that I expect out of myself.
So true. Well, it's such a great insight. And I've learned with that not only you can't treat people the way you are, because they are who they are and they see things where they are. And a great leader is going to be able to pick up on it, like you said, and be able to like tap into it. And sometimes you got to know when to kick someone's ass, and sometimes you got to know when to be there and support them, right? And so every person's so unique and distinct in that way that as a leader, you're not off the hook. You got to work on you, but you got to take care of these individuals too. And that's a hard nuance for a leader to do, especially because a lot of that has to do with timing, meaning you have to pay attention to your teammates, your leadership team, to make sure that something's off, and then you got to go inspect it, right? So I think that's great advice. And listen, I really appreciate you spending time with me. Is there anything else you want to plug? Anything else that people can be aware of? How do they connect with you, or just go to do you have a website?
Yep. At Shawne Merriman on all the social media, and then at Lights Out Sports TV, and then at Lights Out Excel. Well, MMA, we got a huge fight coming up December 7th. It will be live on Lights Out Sports TV. So make sure you guys download the app. Anywhere you got a smart TV or iOS, Android, download Lights Out Sports TV.
Awesome. Have you ever fought?
No, but I think about it quite often, man. I still spar with the guys. I mean, if I had some time today before my flight, I'll probably go jump in and get some rounds in. But I still spar twice a week with a lot of the pros.
I can never understand about UFC, man. I see these guys take hits. If I got hit one time, my face would fall apart. These dudes are unbelievable. I don't know what they're made of, but they're not human. I mean, these guys are animals.
They are, and I got to remind them that they're animals and I'm not. My days are over. So when we get in these sparring sessions, hey, don't put me in a lock or some kind of arm bar or something to break something, because I am not a fighter. I'm here strictly because I love the sport and I love staying in shape. So you're right. They are different human beings.
They're animals. They're animals. Same thing with with your community in the NFL, and now you're seeing it in the business world. So just watching you is an inspiration, and I really appreciate talking. You are very good at articulating what you're thinking, and I can really appreciate that because I don't have to guess, and you're a straight shooter. So again, thanks for your time. I'll help share your message. I'll provide a cool little asset, and I'll do this video up for you. And if you need anything else from me, you just let me know. But it was a real honor meeting you.
Yeah, same here, and I appreciate it.
All right, thanks, brother. Take care. Have a good one. Okay, see ya.